experience, continuing our coverage of the 2018 fantasy baseball season. If you want to go back and check out old shows, hey, just look at the description. They're all in there. Rankings, bus, some strategy. Hey, I didn't even know which players changed teams, so I had to go over that with Vlad Settler. So now I'm going to bring in Vlad Settler's former League of Leagues partner, NFBC champion, Rob Silver.
Thank you.
What's up?
Good to be here, Pat.
Plug your podcast.
We've got a new podcast. Episode 3 dropped just yesterday. Launch Angle. Search for it wherever you find podcasts. So me and Jeff Zimmerman. It's a fun podcast. We go deep. We go silly. It's not Pat Mayo silly, but
it's not aggressively silly.
No, we don't have a Corey Hart album in the background.
Most people don't know who Corey Hart is.
They don't know who Corey Hart is.
He's Canadian sensation, Corey Hart.
You're too young to remember this. There was real debates between him and Bryan Adams back in the 80s in a way that there used to be Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, like who's going to be bigger, who's the real thing. There were real debates between Corey Hart and Bryan Adams. Both of them were Canadians, but both of them were global at the time. I wear my sunglasses at night. People thought Boy in the Box. People thought Corey Hart was the real deal. Turns out Bryan Adams is the better. People hate Bryan Adams.
Why do people hate Bryan Adams so much?
He's annoying.
Is he annoying? I haven't even heard from Bryan Adams like 15 years.
He's become quite the artiste. Pat, he's quite serious. But then he still sings. Cuts like a knife and all Summer of '69 and not in the Rob Gronkowski Summer of '69. Like he was singing about '69 before Gronk was a speck in Mama Gronk's eye. But yeah, Corey Hart, nice in the background. I don't even know if it's on camera. I see the Eddie Murphy album.
I had to bring that with
me. You owned that. There was no way you were leaving the Eddie Murphy album behind.
It was a gift from my wife, so I was like, well, the company didn't pay for this, I'll bring it with me. It was like my Beastie Boys poster, just bringing it with me.
It was Love at Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy was a really... I don't know if you've ever actually listened to Eddie Murphy sing.
Well, that isn't even Party All the Time. That's Put Your Mouth on Me.
This is bad. He's really...
I love Party All the Time. It has Rick James.
He's so bad. Have you gone back and watched like Eddie Murphy?
I watched Raw not too long ago, and it's comically offensive now. Like I feel like it went through a period of like 10 years where it's like, oh my god, I can't believe he's saying these things. But now that we're in where like everyone is offended by everything,
sure,
it's hilarious to hear him like go in on just the most un-PC things ever.
Yeah.
I don't think it's working out for him so much.
I wonder if you showed up. Let's say you're a Saudi billionaire. Let's pretend you are,
which I am,
obviously. So let's roll with this. You show up at Eddie Murphy's house, and you're like, "How much do I need to pay you to get up on a stage and redo Raw? Just one night. It'll just be me, my 2 kids, and my wife. I want to see you get up there and do." Or Delirious, like your pick, either one of them, because they're both just so filthy and so outrageous, as you say, in a 2018 context. Is there a price at which Eddie Murphy would be like, yeah, no, fuck, I'll get up there and do, it's you, your wife, and your 2 kids, and all I have to go is perform Raw again? I'll do that.
The thing is, Eddie Murphy has so much money. Because he did like Dr. Dolittle and all the Shrek movies. He doesn't need it. If he needed the money, 100%.
Right. So
he just doesn't need it.
So he's not going Nicolas Cage on this. He's not willing to just totally whore himself out for any amount. So your prediction is there is no amount of money you could offer Eddie Murphy in order for him to actually perform Raw.
$20 million?
See, to me, that if I'm a billionaire, that's totally worth it.
That's what you would do with your billionaire money. You'd pay Eddie Murphy to read Delirious.
That would be like Tuesday. That would just be Tuesday. I'm making that an interest every single. Anyways. What are we talking about here,
baseball, I think.
Yeah.
So you won the NFBC.
2016.
2016.
Yes.
Champion. It's a lot of cash.
$125,000 bucks.
I thought it was $450. Is it $450 now?
It was never $450,000 bucks.
Yeah.
Wait. Have you heard that it's $450? Did they fuck me? Like, was I supposed to get another $300,000?
Maybe, I don't know. I feel like you got paid in America and you bring it back to Canada. It's probably like $3 million.
And as a Canadian, it was lottery gaming winning, so I also had no tax obligations on
that's
that.
actually interesting about that. Did they take it out and you had to go get it back?
The NFBC doesn't withhold for Canadians.
Okay.
And for anybody watching, like this is not a scam. If somebody from CRA is watching, I'm following the rules. In Canada, lottery and gaming winnings are non-taxable. So anything you win as a Canadian. The exception is if you
professional.
So if you're a professional poker player, for example, Daniel Negreanu hasn't lived in Canada for a long time, but if you're a professional poker player, and the test is, and I'm a recovering lawyer, don't take this as actual tax law advice. The test is, do you have a reasonable expectation of profits? So if you're a professional poker player, it's income. What they don't want is you and me are two buddies. We're flying down to Vegas. We're going to call ourselves professional poker players. So we're going to write off our flight. We're going to write off our hotel. We're going to write off the steak dinner. And we lost $20,000 or $5,000 or $100, whatever. I don't know what kind of stakes you play when you go down to Vegas. They obviously don't want you declaring losses on gambling just because you're a guy. And most gaming wins in Canada are state-run lotteries, right? The province or the federal government or whoever, you know, in Ontario, it's the Lottery Gaming Commission. People here at home or in the U.S. are really excited hearing about how...
Hey, all people need to know about Canadian lottery is that you can go to the corner store and play a sports parlay if you want.
Yes. Lame sports betting.
Yeah, don't ever play it. It's horrible odds, but it is available to do.
But because it's the government running it, it doesn't make a ton of sense, given that's what 98%, 99% of Canadians are winning for lottery wins. It doesn't make sense to tax that back. So it's tax-free. So yes, my NFBC, $125,000 was tax-free, which doubles it. I'd say that to American big DFS players, and they're like, maybe I should be moving to Canada if that's wrong.
I actually don't understand why most haven't done it.
It's not as easy, as you know, it's not as easy as that.
I feel like that's the sneaky little thing about Canadian immigration. Tough to get in the country.
But if you, forget the guy who's just sitting at home playing for fun, you know, $10 here, $20
No,
there.
The guys that are putting in 50 grand a week.
If you're a professional and therefore you're humping it and your margin, you know, you're working. That's your job. The difference between paying tax and not paying tax, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody has ever been told by CRA, we have now crossed you over into your professional fantasy player. I haven't heard. If there's
I'll ask my mom. She's a CRA tax agent.
So yeah, like the difference between having to pay tax on your winnings and not pay tax on your winnings, perfectly legal. Again, this is everybody following all the rules in either country. To me, is the difference between having a big leeway and having a successful year and having a much tighter leeway if you have to pay tax on it.
Well, you wouldn't complain about the rake all that much anymore.
It changes changes the economics, I would think, of the game if you are a professional. Again, I am an amateur for my friends at CRA who are watching this. I just happen to get
good. You just happen to win.
I happen to get lucky one year, and now I'm on the Pat Mayo experience. Like this,
hey, you're a professional podcast host.
Which again, to CRA, you can't put a price on that. So anybody who thinks you can put a price on being on the Pat Mayo experience has never been on the Pat Mayo experience.
So let's talk a little bit of baseball. What are you looking at this year? What's just big picture macro strategy, whether it's an NFBC 15-team league, whether it's a 12-team league with your normal categories, whether it's an auction league.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that people have wrong so far?
There's a sense, I think, that people are talking about, and Vlad wouldn't have talked about this because he's too sharp a guy. There's a sense that pitching is tight this year, that you got to pounce on those four big pitchers, you know, Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, Sale, and Kluber. You got to get one of those guys, and if you don't, you really have to push pitching because there just aren't a lot of good pitchers in a year this year.
When did that flip? Because it seemed like for a good 10 years, everyone took pitchers early in like the early 2000s. And then around like 2008, 2009, it was just like, well, you don't need to take a pitcher until like the 14th round because it doesn't really matter. Then it flipped back the other way because Kershaw kept being so good.
Part of it is the changing reality of real baseball. So we went through an extreme, obviously the steroid era, extreme offensive environment. Then we went through a real pitching environment. Just general runs came down. And now with the juice ball, runs have gone back up.
Is a juice ball, the last time everyone said there was a juice ball, it just turned out all the players were juiced.
No, they may be. I'm a little bit skeptical. Did you see about the curler who got busted?
No.
There was a curler in the Winter Olympics. I'm shocked. Aren't you doing daily curling coverage on the Pat Mayo experience?
I did an Olympic show only to talk about how much I dislike the Olympics.
Yeah, a curler got busted. Basically, and what the head of the International Curling Association came out and said, no, people laugh, but there are people who are using PEDs in curling. I love the notion that curling takes PEDs more seriously than the NFL or the NHL. It's like we have 400-pound offensive linemen who can run 4.2 40s, but nobody in football is using PEDs. But curling, it's a big deal. Anyways, that's a digression.
I think it's actually a big thing with football. I don't think you should be penalized for doing steroids in football.
You want the all drugs.
It's not that I want the all.
So you're already gearing up for fantasy XFL.
Oh, absolutely. Just make them as legal as possible. With football is like, you only have such a short amount of time to actually earn money.
Yeah.
You need recovery because it's a devastating game. At least it makes sense to me in football.
100%. They claim they have testing, and we know they have testing because the odd random guy gets busted. I don't want to impugn all players. I assume it is somewhere between 0 and all, and it is neither pole. But
so it's between NASCAR and wrestling.
Of all, are you suggesting there are wrestlers who engage in?
I mean, they have a wellness program, so I don't think that happens anymore. But I mean, I've seen some of these guys. Dino Bravo is pretty big.
Anyways, boy, this is
the baseball fans love it. When we were just talking about baseball.
Exactly. So yeah, so right now there's 100% of juice ball. There's been a bunch of studies. We know that the ball is juiced. The mistake people have made, of course, is everything in fantasy is relative. So the fact that if everybody's ERA goes up to 4, everybody's ERA in terms of averages comes down to 3.75, it doesn't really matter. So people who are pushing pitchers, I think the reason people feel that way is last year at this time, you had a bunch of guys like Noah Syndergaard, who was being pushed really hard. You had Madison Bumgarner, who was a consensus second round. They got hurt last year. So there's more risk associated with them. Whereas those top 4, in part because of recency bias, they were good last year, and therefore my assumption is they're going to be good this year, gives me a sense of comfort. They were awesome. They're going to be awesome again. We know from history the odds that all 4 of those pitchers perform as the top 4 pitchers this year, it's possible because all 4 of them are awesome. The likelihood of all 4 of them staying healthy and being top 4 pitchers is very close to 0. We don't know which of the 4 is the most likely to bust.
Therein lies the problem.
But it's a bad bet that all 4 of them do. But I get why they're very attractive to pounce on them. So I think that's one of the myths is you need to push pitching this year.
Even to add on to that, as Garion had mentioned last time he was on, that even someone like he has Sale ranked at number 1 above Kershaw, only because you're seeing more and more pitchers and more teams, especially the Dodgers and the Astros too, utilize this DL rule. Hey, we'll sit you down for 2 weeks. Yeah. So the innings aren't there like they used to be, and therefore you're not going to get as many strikeouts in the counting. The whip and ERA will still be good, but they won't be as impactful without the bulk of innings that you used to get.
So Garion's a sharp guy, so I'm not going to disagree with Garion.
No, you can disagree. I'll argue as Garion.
Are you going to put on like a Garion's voice while you're arguing as Garion?
Okay.
That's awesome. So two different perspectives. I'll talk about that. Number 1, in terms of who should you take higher, Sale, Kershaw, Scherzer, Kluber. You can make a case for all of them. The biggest case for Sale, he's youngest, and that's not nothing in terms of baseball. Kershaw this year. Sorry, I wouldn't want to get something factually wrong on the Pat Mayo experience. I know how meticulous you are.
If there's one thing people know about me, it's how meticulous I am with the facts.
For you to have to come on next episode and say, my guest last episode, Rob Silver, made 3 factual mistakes. I can't start this show until I correct them and have that hanging out.
I mean, I have Tim Andercust on all the time.
Yeah. So Kershaw is 30 this year. He's not old. He's not over the hill. But Sale's 29. So it's a year. That makes a difference. Kershaw has the best ceiling in baseball. If you told me all 4 of those pitchers are going to throw 220 innings, I take Clayton Kershaw, and everybody takes Clayton.
Can Clayton Kershaw get to 220 innings?
So everybody's talking about how the Dodgers were abusing the new 10-day DL rule, and they were to a large extent. They weren't doing it with Clayton Kershaw. If Clayton Kershaw is healthy for 34 starts, Clayton Kershaw is making 34 starts. If Clayton Kershaw is pitching strong through the 7th inning, Clayton Kershaw is coming out for the 7th inning. So Clayton Kershaw's risk is injury risk, his back problems. When people start getting back problems, Sometimes they go away. Often they don't just go away. So he has, of the four, the lowest floor in some ways, because on the one hand, they're all pitchers. By definition, every single pitcher could be thrown a bullpen session right now, and that's the last pitch they will ever throw. There is risk with every pitcher in baseball. Kershaw, because of his recent injury history, has a little bit more risk, and that's why he's not the automatic number one pitcher. Max Scherzer has been so good for the last since he went to Washington. Scherzer has been studly. You draft Max Scherzer as your first pitcher, lock in those stats. On the other hand, Max Scherzer is 33 years old this year.
Is he really?
Yeah, it's we're all getting older.
I guess, I mean, that's older than me, but not by much.
Yeah, no, look, 26 is still your prime.
I'm 22. How dare you?
So Scherzer's awesome. Kluber, down the stretch last year, his second half was as good a second half as anybody other than maybe Jake Arrieta has had in the last decade. So there's no wrong answer.
Do you just take the one who goes last?
Well, it depends where you're drafting, and it depends what the price is in your auction. It also depends whether you're a ceiling player or a floor player. If you're a ceiling player, Kershaw is my first pick. If I just want the safest guy, I'm probably with Sale or with Scherzer. But the second way to look at Garian's comment in terms of innings, now we're getting wonky, which I know you don't like on the Pat Mayo experience. It's true, there are a lot more pitchers this year than there would have been 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, who are really good pitchers, who are being drafted in the top 10, top 12 rounds, who you realistically are projecting for 130, 140 innings. A great experience is Clayton Kershaw's teammate, Rich Hill. Rich Hill, who's 37 years old, I believe, there is no projection you can do that is more than 130, 140 innings for Rich Hill. Those 140 innings are going to be awesome innings. They're going to be useful innings, but he just won't pitch more. The Dodgers probably won't let him. Unlike Kershaw, the Dodgers probably don't want him to pitch more than 160. So maybe you get a bit of upside. And there's a bunch of guys like that. You have James Paxton, who, if you said he's going to pitch 200 innings, I'm like, oh, so he's the American League Cy Young winner this year. But you can't project that, and you're paying for 140, 150 innings.
Does the pricing reflect that, though?
To some extent. And what it also has changed is the average team in a 15-team league 3 years ago was getting routinely 1,400, 1,500 innings because everybody was pitching more. It's pretty obvious why that's the case. The average team in a 15-team league last year, and again, for projection purposes, you have to assume next year is more similar to last year, maybe regressed a little bit up than 5 years ago. It's getting 1,300 innings. 200 innings is a big difference. So what that means is a Scherzer or a Kluber or a Sale who pitches 220, 240 innings can be a bigger percentage of your overall team innings, and therefore ERA and WHIP have a bigger relative contribution than they would have 3 to 5 years ago. But what it also means is if I'm only as a team going to have 1,300 innings, 130 inning pitchers. Obviously, when Rich Hill goes on the DL, I can backfill for him, so I'm getting some stats from it.
So when you project,
it'll be a replacement level.
Yeah, when you project that in, do you do replacement level type guy?
Yeah, you have to, and it never works out perfectly. The Dodgers put him on the DL, Monday at 7:15, and your cutoff is 7 o'clock. It's annoying. If you're this is the kind of stuff maybe the Pat Mayo experience talks about. We don't talk enough about. A lot of the decisions that you're making depend on the type of fantasy guy player you are, how much time you have to manage your season-long teams. In daily, if I'm playing in DFS, I either know Rich Hill is pitching tonight, and therefore I like his price, I love his talent, I'm buying Rich Hill for the night, or not, and it's pretty easy. And if he goes on the DL for 10 days, I don't really care. I'm just looking at who else is actually pitching, and I'll pick the guy I like. So in DFS, Rich Hill's awesome. When Rich Hill is pitching, especially at home, start Rich Hill as long as his price isn't too high. In season long, if I'm a busy guy and I have a new baby at home and I hate managing my roster, I'm going to be active, but I'm realistic about that. I should be leaning towards guys who I don't know are going to be a pain in my ass. Rich Hill will be a pain in your ass as a seed-long owner. If you're super active, if you're paying a lot of attention, if you're taking it seriously, that's just life, and you manage through it. But be honest with yourself. How much time are you putting into this? It's different from football, right? You draft Gronk, you price in the fact that there's a good chance he's going to miss a game or two. True, but it's just Sunday. But it's Sunday morning.
I talk about this all the time when it comes to what level of like fantasy football player you are. We have a guy in our league who's actually won twice that basically drafts whoever the best quarterback is in the first or second round every single year. But he's also not the one making streaming decisions every week. He looks at it once a week.
Yeah.
And have the quarterback who's good, that helps out a lot.
So what does it say about you that
I'm awful?
That you're losing to him routinely?
Yeah, well, we've been doing this for 14 years now.
Is he also taking his kicker in the 6th round?
No, we got rid of kickers, but yes, he used to. He used to fill out his roster, then go 7th round kicker, 8th round defense.
Seattle defense. You got to take Seattle defense in the 7th round.
But he was that guy. But if you have a good quarterback and you have Aaron Rodgers, it makes up for a lot of deficiencies. Where I'm playing, am I playing Case Keenum or Jared Goff this week?
So there are far less pitchers that you can lock in as of today and say this is a 200-inning pitcher because of real baseball. It's nothing to do with fantasy. It's the fantasy implications, and that's rippling through in terms of how people are drafting. But it's all relative. Everybody's dealing with it. So yeah, those top 4 starters are awesome, but you don't need to get one of them to win at all.
Where do you need to go with starting pitcher? Let's say I pass on those 4 guys. Do I now need to get one of the next tier of guys, or can I wait? And let's say I am a very risky fantasy player.
Yeah.
Like, generally speaking, I draft very similar teams across all the years, and in football, it's very pronounced because one year I'll win 9 out of 10 leagues, and then the next year I won't.
You'll go
10.
Yeah.
But like Gronk is a type of player like that. Like I'm always willing to buy into because if he has his year is way better than everyone else's year at tight end. So are there pitchers like that this year? Because Gary was talking about Chris Archer kind of being that guy. He's going a bit later, and if he hits, he's going to hit big. But there's so much risk involved in making him your ace. You're like, ugh.
For sure. And problem with Chris Archer. We hate talking about smart fantasy analysts don't talk about wins. Why? Because pitcher wins are so random. And
but he doesn't get them.
They're so shitty. He hasn't gotten them. Like his last 3 seasons, Chris Archer is 12, 9, 10 wins. And, pitcher wins are random. Tampa may not be as bad as they look right now, given that they've traded away their face of their franchise and their top 4 hitters from last season. But it's tough to project him for more than 11, 12 wins. If I'm drafting my ace, I don't want to have to chase wins somewhere else. So it's tough. But Chris Archer is a good pitcher.
But it feels like he's being suppressed a little bit because of that win total. That happened to Felix Hernandez one year too.
Yeah.
It was like back-to-back years he won like 8 games and almost won the Cy Young.
Yep.
And then won like 12 games. And then like the next year he won 19. Because he's really good.
There are also, last year at this time, so your question is implying that I should name 3 hot rookies who are going to burst out and be aces, and there are those guys, Castillo. Everybody's on Castillo with Cincinnati, and he's wicked talented. He's going way too hot. There's too much helium. He's too people are excited about him for good reason. He's awesome. I just don't like the price for him. Last year at this time, Zach Greinke was washed up and done. Dallas Keuchel was an injury case and not somebody you could really count on. They were both going in 7th, 8th round in 15-team leagues. If you had decided, I'm waiting on starting pitching and I'm going to draft Zach Greinke and Dallas Keuchel, you were really smart or very lucky, and you probably won your league last year. Now, the problem is there were 4 other pitchers going right around them that you could... I said it in this... Obviously, you should have taken. There were guys who didn't work out, and so it's risky. They're all risky. So I'll give you a great name, John Lester, Chicago Cubs. He's mid-30s right now. A year ago at this time, he wasn't a top tier starting pitcher. He was the tier just below that. Why? Because he was reliable. He had 3 consecutive seasons of really good ERA, really good strikeout. He was an ace.
And plays on a team where people try to project wins onto him.
Project wins, but also were historically good batting average on balls in play, and therefore his whip, and everybody on the Cubs whips, because of the shift, because of their defense, was really, really low. Last year he was drafted, he was largely a bust. This year, if you look at the advanced stats, if you look at the StatCast stuff, there's all kinds of reasons to believe he's the exact same pitcher as he was a year ago today. Now, if I'm in the NFBC and I'm paying a $1,600 entry fee, that's the thing we don't mention when we say we want $125,000. It also costs $1,600 to get in. Do I want to bet my whole season on I'm right about Jon Lester, and therefore I'm gonna roll the dice and not take a picture before Jon Lester? No, like that's a really bad bet, even though I could be right on that bet. But would I be okay if I take somebody, let's say a Zach Greinke or a Robbie Ray in the 3rd, 4th round, and then take a Jon Lester? That's how you can start finding inefficiencies, is if you pick those guys who have done it before. What I like in baseball, almost always, especially with premium picks or in an auction, premium prices, I like guys who have done it before. It makes
so you're not buying into Trey Turner?
Trey Turner may be the exception. There are always exceptions to the rule. The problem with Trey Turner, like Trey Turner is my 3rd pick. I'll be honest with you. If I get the 3rd pick, which isn't a great place to be picking this year, and Trout and Altuve, who are
1 and 2,
have become the consensus 1 and 2. They're going 1 and 2 in 95% of leagues. Trey Turner is probably my 3rd pick, despite what I just said. There's always you got to be nuanced, Pat. I know nuance isn't your.
It's not my forte. How close is Turner to those two guys, as opposed to the guys behind? Like
I'm going to give you a almost Pat Mayo level hot take.
Okay.
Trey Turner has by far the highest ceiling of any player in baseball, including Mike Trout. Is that from a fantasy perspective?
Is that because Trout doesn't steal as much anymore?
In large part, and in a world where steals have decreased, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. That's part of it. He can do an Eric Davis like season. You're too young to remember who Eric Davis is. He could go 20-80, 300 batting average, and it wouldn't be shocking at all with 120 runs and decent RBIs. And nobody, from a valuation perspective, nobody can compete with that. So what's the likelihood he hits the ceiling? That's a 15 to 20% play, but because of his speed, his floor is wicked high. With health, that's a big caveat because he's been injured, but his injuries haven't been, it's not like he dislocated his shoulder. It's not like he has a back. He's had fluky-ish injuries, and he has injuries that there's no reason to think his injury risk as of today are any higher than anybody else his age. So because of that, if he gets 600 plate appearances, his floor is crazy high because of his speed. His ceiling is a $60 player in a $260 type auction.
How do I make that sort of conversion? Like, how do I figure out what people are worth in terms of auction dollars?
It's complicated.
It sounds complicated. Like, I used to, like, we switched back to a snake draft.
Sure.
Because we used to do a 16-man auction as my home league.
Yep.
And then everyone just got pissed off for taking 8 hours to do an auction.
Yeah.
And now we just do it in 2 hours and everyone's fine with their day.
Yeah.
But I used to up the budget from 260 to 360.
Just to mess with
to mess with everybody. So no one could go to a site and be like, oh, I can follow this.
Yeah.
And then it just threw everyone's like, I have so much money.
There is if anybody is watching or listening and cares, there is a very good book by a man by the name of Larry Schechter called Winning Fantasy Baseball that will walk you through how to do it, whether you're in a league with an asshole like Pat Mayo who's changing what the budget is, or a traditional 260, but you want to do your own projections and turn them into dollar figures. You can go on Amazon, pay $15 and get it. There's all kinds of articles out there. It's honestly, Pat, it's if you really care about fantasy baseball and you really want to do good, whether it's just beating your 11 buddies or you want to win $125,000, doing your own projections and being able to convert it, even in a snake draft, into dollars is one of the things I think you need to be able to do. It just makes really shitty podcasting.
That is true.
Me walking you through. So you need to use the slope function on Excel to equal slope, open brackets, and then copy the true column. It's not the most awesome podcasting.
How much do tiers play into that then? in terms of projecting what like auction dollars would be.
So when so the way I use tiers in straight drafts, the NFBC is obviously snake drafting. Tiers are I rank everybody based on dollars adjusted for position, but really now it's just catcher that's being adjusted. Where tiers are important is let's say I'm drafting 12th overall. So I know that there's going to be 5 picks in between this pick and it coming back to me. Where tiers are really important are if I have 3 outfielders who are within $1 or $2 and 1 shortstop that's at, three outfielders at $20 and $21 and a shortstop at $19, but there's only 1, and the next shortstop down is at $11. So it's a big gap. It's pretty obvious to me. And I look at ADP, but I do the equation saying the shortstop's the better bet because there's a 30% chance, even if I like the outfielder marginally better than the shortstop, there's a decent chance one of those 3 outfielders will come back to me. Whereas if I lose this shortstop, the gap between that shortstop and the next shortstop is massive. And if I've made a decision, I need those stats, or I don't want to go down to the next tier of shortstops. That's where tiers really work for me. But I think less in tier, and tiering works for some people, and if that's how you draft, that's awesome. For football, it works really well, and it can work really well for baseball. What I like doing more than just position tiers, these 5 outfielders, then these 6 outfielders, and these 7, is stat tiers. And what I mean by that is, let's say there are 5 guys who I like as my lead stolen base guy. I'm not putting a Trey Turner. Trey Turner, the draft. Either I have the 3rd pick,
or you don't. So like Billy Hamilton's on that list.
D Gordon,
VR is on that list.
D Gordon, like let's say I like VR. I'm not saying I do. We can talk about VR. Let's say I like Delino DeShields. So some of them.
Is that because you're playing 1992 fantasy baseball?
Delino DeShields had a child.
Oh.
It was a child, and Delino DeShields Jr.
Does he play for the Expos?
He does. Funny story. He's awesome at the Big O. He plays for Texas Rangers, and he's their leadoff hitter. He's very good. Do you want to talk golf, Pat? We could talk golf instead.
We can.
No. So what I'll tier is, I know I'm not getting Trey Turner, but I know I need my speed from somewhere. And let's say D Gordon is either I take him in the 2nd round or I'm not getting him. Depending where I am in the draft, I'm either going to be in a position where I want to take D Gordon, or if I'm picking at the back half of the draft and somebody like Freddie Freeman is coming back, JD Martinez, it's like I'm not getting D Gordon because I guarantee there's going to be a player I like more than D Gordon who's still going to be on the board. If I'm picking 3rd or 4th and I started with Arenado, then I may very well take D Gordon. So I think through, based on where I'm drafting in a draft, there's a chance I take D Gordon. If I get D Gordon, I'm not taking VR. So like he's off my draft list basically at that point because I don't need him and it's overkill and my power is going to be too low. But if I don't get D Gordon, then the next guy coming up, we'll use your example, Billy Hamilton. I'm not really on Billy Hamilton,
but he's fast.
But he's fast and he'll get you your speed. And I know, let's say I'm targeting Billy Hamilton in the 4th round. And again, it depends who's on. It depends if I have a starting pitcher or not, or if I need Chris Archer. I can't pass on Chris Archer in the 4th round as much as I want Billy Hamilton because I don't have a starting pitcher and the drop off after there. So Billy Hamilton's off my list. Then I know I'm starting to be like, I only have 2 more guys on this list. In this example, I have VR or I have Delino DeShields. So my tier is now shrunk down. And let's say I have VR as I don't know what his ADP is. Let's say it's 13th round. Now I'm at a point where I'm like 12th round. I need to start thinking about, unless there's a player I really like on the board in that 12th round, I need to start being aggressive towards him because otherwise I'm putting myself in a position where, in this example, I'm either Delino or I'm taking Gerard Dyson. There are other options. I'm exaggerating, but that's how I tier. With catchers, in 2 catcher leagues, I tier because either I'm going to get a Gary Sanchez, who's the Rob Gronkowski of catchers. He is way above every other catcher, and just a scarcity perspective. fantasy baseball has gotten off talking about position scarcity. Other than catcher, there is scarcity, especially in 2 catcher leagues, and Gary Sanchez is a huge advantage. Much like Rob Gronkowski, though, there is a big opportunity cost. If you don't take him in the 2nd round, you're not getting Gary Sanchez. There are a lot of other good players, blah, blah, blah. So put Gary Sanchez aside, because that really depends where you're drafting in the draft. But then I go into a draft with different approaches to catcher. Either I'm going to take a top-end catcher, or I want 2 of these 12 catchers. And I know that I have to start going. If we start getting down 6-7, or I'm going to be in the shits, and I've designed a draft where I don't want to be taking the Jason Castro of the world as my first catcher, because it's going to be a long, shitty season of catcher.
Besides catcher, are there any other positions that are looking particularly scarce?
No.
No?
I do not look at position other than catcher. And by that, I'll do a non-Pat Mayo thing and be nuanced.
Just have a hot take.
No.
Screw yourself.
So no. For valuation, every other position is interchangeable. One position is no more valuable because he's a shortstop. So it used to be the case where if you're if you were Troy Tulowitzki back in the day, you're so much more valuable than every other shortstop. You need to reach for Tulo because he plays shortstop. That is not the case anymore. Carlos Correa is awesome because he's awesome, not because he's awesome and he plays shortstop. Any fantasy analyst, other than AL only or NL only, if you're an AL only or NL only, that is a different beast. But if you're in a mixed league, pick Jose Altuve because he's great, not because he's great and he plays second base. Now, where I get on Mayo-like and have nuance is, I might go into a draft and say, there's this first baseman who I know I'm going to get in the 20 to 22nd round, who I think is great. I think he's undervalued. I think he's really good. He should be going in the 12th round, but he's going in the 20th round. I want him. So where position scarce, it's not scarcity, where position plays into it is, I obviously don't want to fill up my first base, my corner, and my DH before the 20th round just because there's really good value on the board and happens to be first base if I really, really, really want this first baseman. I never want to leave myself in a position where I have to get this guy, but there are always 6 or 7 or 9 players that I think I just am valuing different for whatever reason from everybody else. So I want to leave spots for a few of those guys, and I'm cognizant of that. And if there are 2 players who are close, and I know there's a first baseman in 5 rounds I want to take, I might lean towards the third baseman or the outfielder. But that is different from position scarcity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, well, I guess the question would be, instead of position scarcity, should you be cognizant of where the cliff is at a certain position? Like, after this guy, it gets really dreadful.
I wouldn't say it's a cliff. I think that before you go in the draft, you should look at the player pool and see where guys you like happen to be. So if you just don't like any of the shortstops after the first 12 shortstops, you just don't think they're good buys, you don't think they kill your batting average, whatever the reason is, you match up ADP to cost, and you just feel like they're all crap. I don't want any of those guys. That's an argument to taking Carlos Correa a little bit earlier. If you love a bunch of late second basemen for whatever reason, you look at, we're here in Toronto, you look at Devin Travis and you're like, I think this is the year he stays healthy, and I think he's going to put up a 70, 20, 80, 280 batting average, and he's going after pick 300 in drafts. So I'm not going for second base early. Like, I can get Devin Travis. I'll jump his ADP by 50 picks. And if I'm right, that wins me my league. That's huge for me. If you believe that, then do your homework ahead of time and design a draft strategy around that.
How do you need to be aware of ADP? Just in the sense of, hey, I know I can wait on this guy, or is it a thing where it's like, screw it, I like this guy, I'm taking him?
Yes. People say, so should you be a slave to ADP?
No.
Whether it's in football, baseball, basketball, there is nothing worse than somebody coming out of a draft and saying, I love my team. Why? This quarterback is normally the 9th quarterback off the board, and I got him at the 13th quarterback. but you hate him. Yeah, but he was such a good buy. I got him such a good value. But you were just telling me how you think he's the worst quarterback in the league. But he was such a... It's like, well, no. Draft a team you think is going to win you your league. That's the only point. It being a good value, people oohing and awing afterwards, ooh, or the sites that tell you plus or minus relative to ADP, that's stupid. At the same time, people who say, I don't look at ADP, I just draft my team, it would be like saying, I just buy stocks, I don't look at the price of the stock. Well, that's quite stupid. If you can buy something for $20, paying $40 is stupid. Pay $20 if that's what they're charging. So saying that I don't look at ADP, well, you could have gotten the guy 100 picks later. There's an opportunity cost wrapped into it. But I liked him. It's like, okay, I respect being independent. I respect not being slave. I respect jumping a guy to make sure you get him. All it takes is one other person at the table who likes him more, and ADP doesn't matter. ADP by definition is an average. So I totally get that. But there is something to be said about opportunity cost. If I jump a player who's going 200th to 100, I'm giving up being able to take somebody who's pretty good at 100, and I could have waited to 150 to get that guy. Is there a 5 or 10% chance that somebody else likes him? Yeah. That's why I would never go into a draft and say I must have this player or I'm the season. It's over. First off, if there truly was such a player, you should take him first. Like if your whole strategy depends on this guy, then you're lying if it's the 150th pick. It's why, like, when I'm in drafts and we're like in the 30th round and somebody's, oh, you stole him from me. It's like, fuck off. You waited you took 29 picks and he stole him with the 30th pick from you? You may have wanted him, but you didn't steal him in the 30th round. Anyway, sorry. What was your question again?
I think you hit it pretty well. It was just about knowing what the ADP is.
Yes,
just having a gauge of knowing where this person is going to save value for yourself.
I'd be lying if I said I'm not hugely aware of ADP, a very recent ADP. So is
that more important though? Recent ADP versus because
yes,
I mean when you look at it in January, it's completely different.
Again, whether it's baseball or football, when football drafts are starting in June, July,
they start now.
You guys are fucking.
I don't do it. Other people
are
do.
Crazy. They become obviously very stale at a certain point. So I like recent ADP. As spring training starts, as games start, some guys have helium, some guys start dropping. I like being aware of it, but I'm enough of a grown-up that I'm not tied for it. I just want to know what the market is thinking, being fully aware that the 14 guys I'm sitting around draft or women that I'm drafting with at any one time are not the market. So I need to get my guys. If I want a guy, I will be aggressive about it, but there's a price, and I'm very aware of that.
Can you pick out the polarizing players that, because Billy Hamilton was, it's funny I bring him up again, he was this guy for ages.
For sure.
That over the past 3 years, there'd be 2 or 3 people in your draft room like, I'm going to get Billy Hamilton. And because of that, people would reach on him. Yep. And he became a guy that you knew people were reaching for. Are there players like that this year? It's usually like rookies or a guy who does one thing really well.
So a few. First off, couple of Ozzie Albies on Atlanta.
He's rising right now.
He's shooting up for good reason. Like, I get why he's in a world where speed is rare, where batting average is rare. You can look at him and see a guy who's just filling up the stat sheet. He's 21 years old this year. He's super sexy. The danger in all fantasy sports, though, with the super sexy guy is that the helium just gets too high. So I think he's one of those guys. I mentioned Castillo and Berrios are 2 pitchers who were so good last year as just young pups. I like airing a little bit more on the unsexy experienced guy as an unsexy experienced guy, but I get it. They have a ton of helium going up. The other ones. I guarantee you, if Noah Syndergaard pitches in a first spring training game, whenever, I don't know when his first game is, but sometime in the next 5-6 days, and he's hitting on the radar gun, 98, 99, flashing it up, he's shooting back into the second round very easily. There's something he's such a sexy, studly guy. And he's all, jokes aside, if you told me Noah Syndergaard is pitching 190, 200 innings this year, I'm like, well, then you better take him in the second round because that's going to be huge. The strikeouts are going to be there. Everything's going to be there. So whatever those numbers are going to be off the radar gun, I can see him shooting up. The guys who came up last year, if you want polarizing guys, Bellinger is polarizing. Rhys Hopkins is polarizing. Somebody who will not be on any of my teams this year is Aaron Judge. The power is legit. I worry about the batting average. But with Giancarlo Stanton there are people who are going to be pushing. He's a borderline first, second round pick, Aaron Judge. Totally get it.
Would you rather have Aaron Judge or JD Martinez?
As of today, JD Martinez, not even close.
How high did he move up by signing with the Red Sox?
He is, so in my rankings, he is a top 12 player. Right now, I won't need to take him in the top 12. He's going to be...
He could be your swing pick guy.
If I could start a draft, this is what's crazy. It's weird this year. So last year, the last few years, when you were getting to the back half of the first round, it's not that there weren't good players left. When I won in 2016, I picked 15th. So I was at the back turn. I got Chris Bryant and Max Scherzer at the back turn. Those were good players, really good players. And they were good players going in to the draft. This year, I think there are 20 legitimate players you could make a case for being first-round talents and first-round projectable guys. By definition, only 15 of them can be first-round picks. So back half of the draft, which is usually like I'm kind of screwed because Trout is such a big advantage to start the draft. The reality is the second player, the round 2 player you're getting into the mid picks, even to 30th, you're getting a guy like Josh Donaldson falling. You're getting D. Gordon, whose ADP I think is 29 right now, a huge speed advantage, and you've locked that in. So there's no bad picks there. They're picks I don't like necessarily, but it pisses me off in drafts this year when people say, I can't believe so-and-so fell to the second round. And it's like, well, somebody had to fall. It's like, so should Carlos Correa, like, who did you want to not?
If Mike Trout falls to the second round, you're like,
that's shot.
That's a lot of sense.
Yeah, maybe I should find a new league because this is
or not. That sounds like a great league.
It depends what the stakes are. But yeah, so there's a lot of guys. Every player you're taking in the second round is a good player and somebody you can make a case should have gone earlier.
If there are a few guys inside the top 30 that aren't necessarily bust, but you don't like, who's one?
Aaron Judge.
Okay, who's 2 then?
Cody Bellinger.
Really?
I like Cody Bellinger. I think long term I like him a ton. I think the gravity pulls him down a little bit. So he won't be on any of my teams. The guy, and there's been a lot of talk about this in the last 10 days. The guy who's going really early, who's going to be dropping, I think, a lot. And if you haven't been paying a lot of attention and you just bought a magazine, if you're one of those guys...
If you're buying a magazine, I feel like you're lost at this point.
You're probably not watching your podcast or your show right now, Pat. Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt has been... arguably next to Mike Trout and Jose Altuve, the best fantasy player for the last 3 years. They're installing a humidor in Arizona, and
is it going to make that much of a difference that it would severely impact his fantasy numbers to that extent?
So it certainly did in Colorado when they installed one in Denver, and people much smarter than I am, physicists who study this. Have projected that it's going to cause a 20 to 25% drop in home runs, that the ball is just going to be a lot heavier.
Now, with Paul Goldschmidt, do you need him to hit 45 home runs? Because doesn't he do everything else really well?
So, again, when I say he's going to drop, it's not that I'm saying that he's going to be shit.
But he's the 8th pick instead of the 3rd pick.
Exactly. When you're making decisions on your first-round pick, when you're deciding should I spend $40 in an auction on somebody,
yeah,
it's not good or bad. It's he's no longer truly elite. He's just sort of elite. And if I'm taking him 3rd or 4th overall, which is his ADP still. Again, ADP is a lagging indicator. There's a lot of drafts. He should be going much closer to 9th, 10th. I would take Giancarlo Stanton ahead of him. I'd certainly take Nolan Arenado ahead of it. I would probably take Charlie Blackmon ahead of him. So there's just now a bunch of guys that I would take ahead of him. Now, if you tell me I'm sitting at the 14th pick and Paul Goldschmidt has fallen to me there, I'm staring at my computer for a minute and trying to figure it out. So I'm counting on the fact that if I'm drafting at the back half, I don't have to make that decision. But that's the kind of thing that if you haven't been paying a lot of attention, if you've been playing your golf and just getting ready for a draft right now, not shitting on the golf.
You're just shitting on me.
You should be aware. You should be aware of it because you may say, Paul Goldschmidt's there at the 5th pick. This is a steal. Paul Goldschmidt's awesome. He is awesome. There's lots of reasons to think he'll be a little bit less awesome. And it's like the wide receiver who's been awesome and has lost his quarterback. And it's like, it's not good Peyton Manning throwing him the ball anymore. It's Brock Osweiler or whoever.
So Demaryius Thomas might not be as good.
So it's not that he sucks. It's not that you should never draft him. He's just not quite the same guy. And if you haven't been paying attention and don't realize the context, or an even better example, because it's more subtle than that. That's obvious. Like it's the left tackle on a team that's, you're counting on a margin. The offensive line has been decimated and it's not an elite offensive line. So he's still a good running back, but he's just, I like other guys more. Paul Goldschmidt's in that situation. You just have to adjust him down a little bit.
It's funny you say, it's not that I hate Paul Goldschmidt. He's just being overvalued, or I don't like him compared to the guy who's going 3rd overall. It's the same thing we get into football every. It's like, oh yeah, Odell Beckham's better than Julio Jones. Well, why do you hate Julio Jones? I don't hate Julio Jones.
Why do you hate Julio? You've always hated Julio
I know. Apparently I'm a big hater on all these guys, but like, you have to make a decision either way.
Totally. You're making bets. I would fade Paul Goldschmidt right now, and part of it is, I mean, you are like, I'm sure lots of fans out there. How big a difference is it really going to make?
And we don't know.
We don't know. Again, smart people have a pretty good theory. All of
25% seems like a lot.
What
did it do in Colorado?
20% drop in home runs, and people look at Colorado because it's still the most offensive environment, and they're like, it didn't have a big impact. Look, Colorado, if you're playing DFS, you got to start your Rockies, you got to start everybody in Colorado. It's because people have forgotten how much even more extreme it was prior to the humidor. And physicist Alan Nathan, who is the leading baseball physicist, I don't know what school you go to become the leading physicist on baseball, his studies show that because it's a desert in Phoenix, the real reason people ask, why would they do it? They actually had a good season last year. Why would they make the change? The biggest difference is pitchers, because it's so dry in Phoenix, are having a tough time gripping the baseball in order to throw their pitches. They're they're off speed stuff. They're not able to get a good grip. So that's why they're making the change. Is it's so dry, they were having a tough time gripping the ball, but it makes the ball a lot heavier. It won't fly as much. The one other thing, though, the counter argument on Goldschmidt, if you want to play devil's advocate, is what we also saw in Colorado is as the run environment comes down, teams run more. That happens anywhere in baseball.
And if he traded off home runs for steals, he'd be more valuable as it was.
So I'm pushing up Arizona pitchers a little bit. I am dropping Arizona hitters a little bit more, in part because of the unknown, part because of these projections. But I'm also being open-minded to the possibility they may end up running more, and that may be a potential boom, not just for the Paul Goldschmidts of the world, but guys like Tel Marte, Owens, Pollock was already going
one of their
early.
8 outfielders that they have, the Sioux.
Yeah, but a Gerard Dyson could become really
if he can get playing time.
He's one of those guys. I was using the tiering example of stolen bases, and I used him as a throw aside. He's a guy, if I can have him in a standard kind of 5 outfield league as my 6th outfielder, the guy I don't want to play Gerard Dyson every single week. But if I can get 7 weeks of him, maybe when somebody's hurt, to slip him in for 10, 12, 15 stolen bases, in a lot of competitive leagues, that's 5 or 6 points in stolen bases, and the difference between me winning my league and me finishing 6th.
So we kind of danced around it the entire time about stolen bases. Are stolen bases the most important thing to target to get your stolen bases because they're impossible to find?
No.
Okay. Because that seems to be sort of that's what I'm hearing. Like just scanning Twitter, scanning people's opinions. It seems to be like you need one of these speed guys.
No, I don't. Well, it's nice to have one of them. It's all trade-offs. Everybody says you can find power. Power is everywhere you can find power. There's something called steamer projections. People who are into baseball know what it is. If you go to Fangraphs, it's free projections, but they're great projection system. There are only 3 hitters right now going outside of the top 10 rounds in ADP, NFBC ADP. So outside of the top 150, who Steamer has projected for 25 home runs and a 255 or better batting average. Only 3 hitters.
Giancarlo?
No, outside of the top 10.
Outside of the top 10.
So after the first 10,
Brad Fulmer.
People say power is everywhere. You can wait on power. You can, as long as you don't care about your batting average and you don't care. They come with lots of other shitty stats as well. My point, just in bringing that up, is again, everything is relative. If you are taking D. Gordon in the second round, and somebody else is taking J.D. Martinez in the second round, I have to figure out where am I making up those 40 home runs and the batting average. D. Gordon has a good batting average. J.D. Martinez is a good batting average. D. Gordon maybe is 10 points higher, but the person I need to make up those 40 home runs that J.D. Martinez leads over are probably hitting 235. So the difference in batting average that I just got and the advantage I just got with D. Gordon, I'm eating up to catch up in home runs. My point just is there's no simple answer. I know it's a better hot fantasy take if I came and said, you must take your speed guy by the 3rd round or you cannot win. And if you get D. Gordon in the 2nd round, I guarantee you're going to win. That's what the Pat Mayo experience is all about, is those kinds of takes. It's not true because there's a trade-off to both of those things. So, what's really good? Get Mike Trout and then have somebody get Manny Machado to follow you in the 2nd round and then pick Noah Syndergaard and have him pitch, do 200 innings. Pick the right player and it's all a very easy game. So yeah, the thing with speed is it's tough to find. You need to make a decision. Am I going after speed? You can punt speed. It's not a great strategy, but it's a strategy. And just have a plan for it. Where do I want to find it? And what are my trade-offs for it? If I'm taking one of the no-power speed guys, the rabbits, as people call them, just be very aware that to be competitive in home runs last year in the NFBC, you needed 325 home runs. It's 14-man roster.
Well, can you explain that a little bit too? Because I think that's something that people do not do when they enter the fantasy baseball season, is project out how much do I need to win this category, or what's the baseline that I need to get above in each category.
If it's a league that existed, so it's my home league.
Yeah.
If it's the 7th year of the league, it's very easy for me to go to the stat, if we use whatever site for the stat service, go and look what the team, not necessarily the team that finished first in the category, go and look at what the team that finished 2nd or 3rd had, because often there's an outlier. Somebody who only went after power guys, drafted 3 speed guys. You don't want to try to replicate that. And in almost every league, if you finish 2nd or 3rd in every category, you're going to win your league by a lot. So look at what you needed in your league to finish 2nd or 3rd in home runs last year. In the NFBC, it was 325 to be in the top 15% overall. That's what I'm looking for to win $125,000 again. But whatever your number is. And I don't believe in target drafting. What target drafting would be is the whole draft, all I'm thinking about is hitting those numbers. It's not, our projections aren't that precise, and we're kidding ourselves. When I say that I have J.D. Martinez projected to hit 42 home runs, if I really think that I know what he's going to do, I should be doing something other than being on Pat Mayo's show, because I can make a lot of money doing something else. I'm smart enough to know that it's a range of outcomes, and I think 42 is the most likely, but he could hit 35, he could hit 48, and frankly, my projection wasn't wrong. It's just the random variance of human beings playing a game for 162 games. So don't do target drafting where I'm so obsessed.
But you can see where you're lacking and where you need help.
So that I know that if I take D. Gordon, you're going to project for 2 home runs. And let's say I want to get to 325. Now I need 323 home runs from 13 players. And let's say I didn't get Gary Sanchez because I took D. Gordon, meaning whichever of the 2 catchers I'm going to be taking are going to get 30 home runs combined.
If you're lucky.
So let's say I take Brian McCann and I take whoever they are. So now suddenly I need 290 home runs from the 11 players that are left. That's 26 home runs on average, whatever the math is. I can't take another speed, like I can't take another 0. Like the math will stop working. I still probably also have batting average or OBP as a category. It's a realization. You can do it. You can build a team. I would argue you should go into the draft having already thought about, if there's a good chance I'm going to take D. Gordon, this is what that means I need to do in my 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round to make up that power. Similarly, if I haven't taken a speed guy by the 4th round, it's like, what's my plan here? What am I going to do? And you kind of behoove it to yourself to actually spend the time ahead of the draft saying, these are the different scenarios and these are the different ways I'm going to adjust as the draft is going on to balance these things. And same thing with pitching, obviously.
How good of a pick is Starling Marte?
I really like him. He's a really good
I'm just looking at his steamer projection right now. I'm just like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no.
16 home runs, 30 steals.
If you are taking, like, when I say what, like, just spitball and what a great start to a draft would be, if I'm picking 15th this year and I could get Chris Bryant and JD Martinez in the 1st, 2nd round, and Starling Marte for the speed and the best starting pitcher on the board at the 3-4 turn, and then I'll take another starting pitcher at the 5-6. That's a really, really good start. You got your power locked in. You have a good batting average, and Marte, it's hard to imagine him being a 50-60 stolen base guy, but as long as he's not doing any PEDs this year, 30 stolen bases is something that's a pretty good projection with a real nice batting average. The power is the big question with him. The difference between him being an elite outfielder and a really good outfielder is the difference between him hitting 18 to 20 home runs, in which case he's an elite outfielder, 10 to 12 home runs, he's a very good outfielder.
In leagues that do OBP instead of average.
Yes. Take Joey Votto.
Take Joey Votto. Just lock that in?
Joey
Chris Bryant?
Well, no. I mean, you still take Mike Trout. Joey Votto becomes an elite player.
But, like, how does that affect the speed categories? Because some of the power hitters that you were worried about that they might drag down your average, obviously they move up.
So this is where having the ability to do valuations and actually turn things into dollars is so helpful. If you play with OBP, if you play with quality starts instead of wins.
I don't like that, by the way.
Why?
I don't like it. It's just too fancy.
Fancy? You think that's what?
Yeah.
That's what. Should you have mandatory pocket projectors? If
a little bit. It's like I don't like saves. You know what I like? Saves plus holds. It's like it's just like, let's back off a little bit.
It's funny because
fantasy baseball has been down in popularity. I think because analytics taking over. It's complicated for a lot of people to figure out. I think that has alienated some people that were just wanted to do it more casually. Yeah. Then you start changing the categories of stuff that people don't even half understand. Yeah. Then you have a problem.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a long season.
I think it should end at the All-Star break. They should make specific leagues. You play from, and then that's when people start doing their football stuff. They stop caring.
There is this thing now called Daily.
Yeah,
I'm aware. I'm not sure if you've heard about it.
I have not. This is mind blowing to me. But I like playing season long.
I do too.
Fantasy. But when it gets into September and I'm focused on football, I don't know who's being called up anymore, and I lose any advantage that I had. Now I'm like the worst guy in the league. I'm playing in a league with Gary, and he knows every hot pick.
Am I allowed to shit on fantasy football?
No, go ahead.
But my problem, so yes, I hear everything you're saying. Problem with fantasy football, why I hate fantasy football now, it's you'll spend from like July 1st when you switch from baseball to football to the first week talking about player X, You got to draft player X. He's going in the 3rd round. This guy's going to win your league.
And it changes.
Week 1, he rushes 3 times for 9 yards. Forget the injury. Injury happens. 3 for 9. And it's like you have to cut him and pick up him instead. And it's like you've just spent 3 months telling me this is the guy who's going to win my league. And then, oh no, he's not getting the ball. The coach has decided. And it happens in baseball, but it very rarely happens. Again, it's professional sports. Injuries happen. It's not just the randomness, it's head to head. So I lost by a point, even though my team was so much better. You win the championship. My team was. That's annoying, but that's always been annoying.
That's also a part of the fun part of fantasy too.
It's the
not when you're competing for 150 grand, but amongst your friends, having that sort of stuff keeps people interested.
100%. It's the amnesia, the collective amnesia of the analysis. This guy's awesome, and then within a week, no, he's shit. He's no good. And it happens so much in fantasy football, I find.
It does. But a lot of it is like when you're projecting, especially with football. And the reason that people start doing it 6 months before, 3 months before, it's because it's so popular. People will actually click on that stuff and get all fired up for it. But with football, when you project a player through July and August and you see where he's going, like let's take a running back situation. After week 1, let's say he has a bad game, all of a sudden he gets benched like you do.
Yeah.
Like you almost have to have an amnesia about what you thought as soon as the season starts. Because coaching could be different. Role could be different. It sucks. I'm with you.
You have to, if you're the player, you have to do it, right? Like, I'm not getting back my 3rd round pick. Whether I stick with this guy or I cut him, either way the pick has been made, so I should cut him because he's not getting the ball. He sucks. But it's why Fantasy Bachelor is the most pure form of fantasy, because you can really get into the analysis and count on these things.
And you have spoilers to look at.
There you go.
That can really make a lock pick in there. Now, we don't encourage that. In fact, I said I would publicly shame you on the internet. I will cyberbully people who play spoilers in my league. That's the trade-off. But hey, if you're good with that, you can win.
But that's the real problem with high-stakes fantasy Bachelor. When I won $125,000 playing fantasy Bachelor, really the spoilers were what took away from the prize in many ways.
Yeah, that's okay though.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts on things that we should be knowing about the baseball season? Do you have guys at the very back end? I mean, I know you're playing in these high-stakes leagues. You don't just want to give them away. Give someone 20th round, a guy that you'd be looking at.
20th round. Here's what I would say. Whoever ends up getting playing time in Colorado's outfield is going to be a...
So who's in the mix right now?
David Dahl.
Again, David Dahl?
Yeah, he's back. He was hurt last year. So if Dahl ends up winning the job, he's going to be a great deal. If a guy named Raymond Tapia, I may not be pronouncing that correctly, wins,
is that a fish?
Wins the job, he's going to be a great buy. Ryan McMahon, Vince's illegitimate other son.
I mean, Vince is so old now that could be Shane's son.
It's probably. Anyways, I'm not gonna go there. Ryan McMahon, who may get the first base job, which is just.
So if someone gets playing time in Colorado, pick them. If they're not going high. Even if they are going high?
They're all really cheap right now, those guys. And that is someone, especially if I'm in a home league, people may not have heard of Ryan McMahon. People aren't paying attention to him. And we're going to have uncertainty likely about the way the playing time in Colorado is going to play out right until opening day. And therefore, if you get it right, it could just getting 600 plate appearances playing in Colorado can make your career.
Well, this has been sort of the zero RB fantasy football strategy of exploit these playing time situations that people don't have a good grasp on, then hope to get lucky by fluking into the right guy or putting yourself into the position to get the right guy.
100%.
You can do that in baseball too.
100%. And the better analogy for zero RB is in almost every league, don't pay for saves this year. There's a 40% turnover in closers quickly in almost every.
But are there guys that you can take that you know they're locked in, and are like is Kenley Jansen worth it?
He's not somebody I would draft, only again because of opportunity cost of where he's going. But Kenley Jansen is awesome. The problem is, last year at this time, we thought Aroldis Chapman was also awesome. Aroldis Chapman lost the job for a long time. You lost money if you had Aroldis Chapman. We thought Zach Britton was awesome. Zach Britton got hurt. There was massive turnover at closer. So I'm not saying don't draft any closers.
Well, you're gonna need saves somewhere.
Again, it's not with zero RB. The point is not to literally draft zero RBs. It's don't use precious resources on closers because you can get cheaper closers. I love a draft so I'll give you the guy who and everybody in the NFBC knows I love him, Blake Trinan. So he's Oakland's closer right now. If he is there in the 12th round, you can't tell me that Blake Trinan is going to be a worse closer this year than almost anybody other than Kenley Jansen or Craig Kimbrell. He may be, but so may be the guy who's going as the third or fourth or fifth closer off the board. So that's the kind of guy. He's both high-skilled and cheap that I love drafting. So I'm not saying literally spend nothing on closers. Do not draft saves. You do need saves. But because it's the 12th round pick, if I'm wrong, if he loses the job, if he gets hurt, things that can happen to the closer you take in the 4th or 5th round, I've lost my 12th round pick. That's not awesome. I don't want to lose my 12th round pick, but it's certainly not devastating to me that happens. There's a bunch of guys later than that. And then the dream is to find next year's Corey Knebel or this year's Corey Knebel in the 28th round. And what you do there is
high strikeouts,
high skill players. Even if they're on a team, maybe not on the Dodgers or on Boston, but even if there's a good closer, you just don't know what's going to happen. And again, going back to Garian's point from earlier, those 100 strikeout, 80 inning types of relievers that in a 1,500 inning pitch team environment are sort of marginal are now quite valuable, right? Especially they're valuable if I have Rich Hill, who I mentioned earlier, who's going to throw me 130 innings. And when he goes on the DL, instead of taking the really crappy Kansas City Royals 5th starter off the waiver wire who's getting blown up, I just put a high-skill reliever in. He's getting basically the same strikeouts as
But your ratios are much better.
But I'm protecting my ratios until I figure things out. Is a better approach, and I may get lucky and he'll become a closer. So either way, I can either use him to backfill my 7th, 8th spots on my pitching staff, or I get lucky. And if I'm wrong about that guy, it's my 28th pick. I drop him on the waiver wire. I pick somebody up. Every pick that I take from the 25th down, I'm counting on the fact that I'm waiving them next week on Sunday, right? So I'm wrong. Who cares?
So when it comes to closers, would you go anything higher than, let's say, 10th round? Avoiding, like, one of the big guys dropping for whatever reason.
Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, if Kenley Jansen is there in the 7th round, I'm taking Kenley Jansen. So it's not I will never.
Yeah.
The same way that somebody who goes 0 RB, there's a point at which every RB you would take, even if it's breaking it. So, yeah, I would. With all of them, there is a scenario where I would take those earlier closers.
But what what would it be?
I could almost always guarantee you there will be a player I like more on the board than them before, let's say, the 9th, 10th round. In the 9th, 10th round, like a Sean Doolittle on Washington, I quite like him. If he's there in the 10th round and just I'm happy with the way both my offense and my starting pitching is looking, I might take him so I don't need to chase a closer later. But the Fernando Rodney experience is not fun. It's not good for your health. It can lose your hairline for you. But Fernando Rodney can get 35 saves in Minnesota this year. I'm not saying go into a draft with a strategy. Draft Fernando Rodney. That's not the Rob Silver plan for this year. But don't be terrified when it's like, oh my God, there's the other closer that I like that is going too cheap in some drafts that I would jump a little bit. Brandon Morrow. Toronto Blues.
Is he a closer though?
He is Chicago Cubs closer, and he was an so for those who don't follow closely,
fantasy sleeper for 6 consecutive years running.
So he was a failed, oft-injured starting pitcher.
Oft-injured. I wouldn't say he was failed. When he pitched, he was good.
He was.
He's the AJ Burnett of our time.
Smartly turned into a relief pitcher by the Dodgers last year for free, basically for them. And was awesome for them, pitching in late high leverage innings, but obviously not closing for them. The Cubs have signed him and have stated he is their closer. His ADP doesn't reflect the fact that he has a job. Could he lose the job? He's never done this before, so I'm not saying he.
Yeah. What if it turns out he doesn't have the closer's mentality, Rob?
He could get freaked out by the pressure. But there's every reason to think, based on what he did last year, that he has the skills to keep it on a very good team. His ADP does not reflect that. He's a guy I might go a little bit higher for, because I think he is a legit potential without the legit cost.
Would you ever look into it? Because I tried to do this in the past, and sometimes it's worked out. And even in football, when you look at hey, the starting running back went down, who is the next guy up? You look at the coach and be like, he's going to go to the older guy, because that's what he has the track record of doing. And then you get the guy that no one wants for free, and they're the ones who get the saves.
So a great example. So there are a bunch of teams as of today. We may by mid-March, when most people are holding their drafts, we'll have better information. Bunch of teams as of today there are 3 guys who could be the closer. One of them is in Anaheim. Mike Scioscia is that guy.
He'll take the old guy.
Yeah.
Well, he's still suffering from radiation poisoning.
It's
look, been 25 years.
Working at the power plant is not easy. Mr. Burns pays a decent severance, though, to those guys as they're recovering. So, would it shock me if Jim Johnson comes out of the bullpen for the first? My God, that's Jim Johnson's music. What's he doing here? Wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't. But in the 30th round, if I haven't gotten one of the guys I like a lot more than him, I'd prefer. So we were saying earlier, I prefer to draft a high skilled guy there who is useful to me.
Yeah, the guy with 13 Ks per 9 who has a chance to get that role and dominate if he gets it.
Yeah. Jim Johnson is either the closer or unrosterable, and is 95% unrosterable. But it's Mike Scioscia. What the how he's got the gumption and the closer look. I look
good
at
experience
his,
too. He's done it before.
It happens with one team almost every year, where everybody assumes this guy is the closer. On opening day, it's 3-1 going into the 9th, and this random guy comes out, and it's like, what the hell just happened here? And that guy runs with the job, and it happens almost every year, it seems.
All right, Rob Silver. Plug the podcast again.
It's Launch Angle. It's me, Zimmerman. If you like this, it's nothing like this. It's actually focused mostly
on baseball? How dare you?
On baseball, but this was a ton of fun.
And follow you on Twitter to see...
Oh, don't do that.
No, follow you on Twitter so you can see mean conservative Canadian politicians take shots at you.
I am the worst follow on Twitter.
You see, you might say that. I'm not going to say that you're good, but there are far worse follows. And I follow some of them. They're not good.
Look, Pat, I appreciate you holding me above your Russian porn bots that you...
they're legit good. They have the best stories.
Yeah, no, if you like Canadian politics, my baseball tweets will annoy the shit out of you. If you like baseball, my Canadian politics, and there's a small overlay between those two concentric circles of people who like both baseball and my particular take on Canadian politics, and those 6 people are all related to me.
Oh, that's nice, though.
Yeah, but thanks. Rob Silver on Twitter.
All right, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you can get a podcast. You can get the Pat Mayo Experience.
You just made up 3 of those.
I did not. That's the whole thing. People are using everything these days to go do that. So subscribe, rate, leave a review. Always positive. Please don't leave me negative reviews. I can't handle that. And then on YouTube, DraftKings YouTube page in the DK Live app for all the video versions. And do not be afraid to give the episode a like. It goes a long way. Tell some friends, and I'll do it. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck this fantasy baseball season. I'll see you next time.